It's that question that has been asked a million times before. How would Rangers and Celtic get on in the Premier League? Would they be relegated? Would they be challenging for the Europe spots and maybe even the title? Well, luckily, we can test this out in Football Manager. So I have simmed through several seasons where I put Rangers and Celtic into the English league system. They both went into the Premier League. I dropped Forest and Bournemouth down back into the Championship for a season. Sorry, Forest and Bournemouth fans. Sunderland and Carlisle went up to the Scottish Premier League. So let me know how you think Sunderland and Carlisle would get on in the Scottish Premier League. Remember, there's no Rangers and Celtic there either. Maybe I'll show that off in a future video. How do you think they did? But let's start with how Rangers and Celtic got on in their first season in the Premier League. So here we are after one season, and you can see it's pretty poor for both Celtic, even more so for Rangers. Rangers finished bottom of the league, relegated on 25 points, which is a really, really low score. Those of you know Premier League is not quite as low as Derby's score that one time, but 25 is pretty poor. They were a good 11 points off safety. Interestingly, Leeds, Fulham went down with them. Celtic are there in 16th, but just below Celtic, really interestingly, Spurs also really struggled this season, down in 17th, nearly getting relegated themselves. So you have to wonder if the introduction of Celtic and Rangers made the league that little bit tougher. You know, obviously Forest, Bournemouth are not there this season. Two tougher teams. Have they made it harder for teams like Spurs to do really, really well? You can see Wolves though. Wolves are way up in 8th position this season. Leicester in 9th, unlike real life. On the transfer front, Celtic did grab one or two players. They grabbed Jefferson Lerma from Bournemouth down in the Championship for around 5.75 million, absolute bargain there, and Davinson Sanchez for 9 million from Spurs. Again, really, really cheap, both in that January window. Rangers, meanwhile, only really grabbed Maksimovic on a free transfer, and also Jacob Murphy and Abdul Samad Damlou from Matalyaspor. So two players they only got. Jacob Murphy is only a loan as well. On the manager front, Ron Bronckhorst was sacked from Rangers and Bordalas has come in. But the Celtic managerial change is even more interesting. Postecoglou is sacked after 1 year and 267 days. And guess who comes back in? None other than Neil Lennon for another stint at Celtic. The two teams did keep their European spots for this season, so I didn't want to take those away from them. But you see, Celtic got knocked out bottom of their group from the Champions League, so they didn't even get into the Europa League. They went out of a group with Barca, Porto and Bayern Leverkusen. A tough group, 6 points. They got 2 wins in there, but it wasn't enough to get them through. Porto just sneaking in ahead of them. Rangers also finished bottom of their group, 0 points. No wins, no draws. Sporting, PSG and Atletico Madrid were in their group. Very, very tough group, but absolutely knocked out of the competition. So neither of these teams going to Europe next year. Neither of them did particularly well in the other cups either. FA Cup both went out 3rd round, 4th round. So nothing on the cards for them to get back into Europe next season. Talking next season, let's have a look how they get on in their second season. Obviously Rangers are now down in the Championship. In the Premier League, you can see Forest and Bournemouth did get back in, of course, down in the Championship last season. Celtic finished this second season down in 17th. Once again, just narrowly avoid that relegation, but they're only just hanging on in the division. You can see at the top, Liverpool, City, Villa are doing really, really well. West Ham as well. They got Europe last season. They won the Europa League. They got themselves another Europe this year. And this year they've got Champions League. Arsenal, Man United, Tottenham have recovered a little bit. They got the Conference League position, at least down in 8th. In fact, there are 9 English teams playing in Europe next season, which is incredible. But Celtic all the way down. I mean, it's Celtic's Scottish team, of course, but Celtic all the way down now in 17th spot, just hanging on to their Premier League position. Couple of interesting transfers in there. Parisi from Empoli, Jamal Lewis from Newcastle, Cardalo they got in from Wolves as well. Elmas they got in from Napoli, and Dong Yun they got in from Hertha Berlin. So a couple of interesting players that they got in. How about Rangers down in the Championship? Well, they managed to get themselves back into the Premiership. They finished second in the league, 10 losses, which is quite a lot you imagine down in the Championship. Leeds, Sheffield United, the other two teams promoted. Sheffield United, of course, through the playoffs, but Rangers have found themselves back in the Premier League next season, so it's a quick recovery. They're going to go back up to the Premier League. One of the interesting things is Rangers, I think, spent more than Celtic in this season. You can see they got Will Smallbone, Ryan Christie, Rob Holding they got from Wolves for 9 million. He must have moved there from Arsenal last year. Bustos they got from Man City with this youngster on loan. Baba Rahman in from Chelsea, so they've definitely got in a lot more players. We'll see if it pays off long term for them though. Neil Lennon at Celtic, by the way, lasted just 168 days before he was sacked again. Tony Mowbray has now come in and he has lasted 276 days. So Neil Lennon in, back out again. We'll see how long Mowbray lasts before they bring Neil Lennon back once again. This is the third season. You can see Celtic 13th. They've done a little bit better this time. 48 points is not a massive point haul. Rangers have also done better than their first stint in the Premier League, but it is not enough. And they're going back down once again into the Championship. They're turning into a bit of a yo-yo club here. 33 points, just 3 points off safety. Norwich and Sheffield United joining them. Up at the top, you see Villa are doing really, really well up there. Brentford also doing again. And West Ham once again getting themselves European position. They didn't get the Champions League spot this season, but they're doing pretty solid, getting a number of European spots. Tony Mowbray is still in charge at Celtic. And in terms of transfers, they made a few interesting ones. Adamu in from Salzburg. They got Cabral in from Sporting and Hedl in from Vienna. They spent a little bit of money. Tanganga as well, getting another defender from Spurs up there. 53 million they spent in, and 53 million's worth they also got rid of. You can see a couple on here. Mostly it went to Jorge Cuenca, who has gone to Newcastle, the centre back. So they've made most of their money off of him. A couple other players that they sold for a little bit of money. Checho, for example, they sent to Watford, but for the most part, they're spending as much as they're earning. Dallas has also held on at Rangers. He's now been there for nearly 3 years. But they spent a fair amount on transfers, more than they've raked in. In fact, they've not sold a single player last season. In terms of the transfers in, though, they brought in Jack Stacey, Bustos, Hwang Hee-chan, Bongdoa, Mele. I think Jack Stacey they even had on loan last season. They've spent loads of money on players, or small amounts though, small amounts. So we'll see if that pays off and they get themselves back from the Championship. Hopefully they don't lose too many players down in the Championship, and we don't want them to turn into a yo-yo club too much. Let's go forward, see how they get on in the 4th season. This is the 4th season in the Premier League for Celtic. 15th, again, languishing down in the bottom half of the table. They're really, really struggling to get into those European spots, especially when you're seeing West Ham, Aston Villa break in. You would have thought Celtic would have been in and around those teams at least, but they're really, really struggling down at the bottom half of the table again. Once again, avoiding relegation though. And down in the Championship, Rangers really struggled. They only just got through the playoffs. You can see how tight it is there at the top of the league. 82 points. Bournemouth went up on automatically, but Forest 80 points, Watford 78, Stoke 76, and Rangers also on 76. They did manage to win the playoffs, beating out Stoke in the final 2-0, so they are going to go back up to the Premier League though. Dallas is still there at Rangers, but they did have to have a little bit of a clear out. 44 million they have made in transfers of players they've had to get rid of. Rob Holding has gone for 7 million. They also got rid of Ryan Christie for 26 million. That is the majority of their budget out. They brought in Henry Lawrence from Norwich in for a bit of money, and Paddy Lane in from Fleetwood. So they're trying to make a little bit of money to make sure they can get back into the Premier League without going bankrupt. For Celtic, Tony Mowbray is still there. He's been there nearly 3 years now. And this season, they've decided to spend a little bit of that money that they saved perhaps last season. Haksabanovic has gone to Porto, and they've brought in a whole load of players. Calidio is the most expensive of those who's come in from Newcastle, but they bought Neco Williams from Forest, they bought Daniel Gore from Man United, Hefty from Genoa, so there's quite a few players there. Mbuku, they bought in from Salernitana. Some interesting players. See how they get on for Celtic in the next couple of seasons. Hopefully they can push on and do well. We're now 5 seasons in, and for the first time, Rangers have managed to stay in the league. They finished 16th. Celtic with a much improved position up in 12th, although they only just, it's pretty tight down there at the bottom. Rangers got 43 points, Celtic 46. They're not far off the Europe spots, but they're also not far off the relegation. They're sort of languishing around the mid-table, but both of them are staying in the Premier League this year. You see, obviously, Haaland, Bernardo Silva, Rashford, the top players still in the Premier League. Celtic aren't really getting a look in. Tony Mowbray still going strong at Celtic, and a bit of money going into their team as well. You can see they can buy Adams, Maitland-Niles, Harry Maguire is coming in on a free transfer, Payne, Slight, and Wella Kiewicz, I don't know if I pronounced that right, from Cagliari. They spent 15 million on him. He was quite expensive. But some players leaving as well. Cabral has gone. Jamal Lewis for 300k to Fulham, pretty cheap departure. Maeda has gone to Leipzig, so there's a few players leaving, but overall they're spending a little bit extra more money than they are making. Dallas has also been here for 4 years now, and in terms of transfers, they are spending a bit more than they're making from selling players. But you see, they brought in Diania from Burnley. They brought in Ageti from Bologna. There's a few players. Checho they've brought in from Watford for 4.8 million. Got James Garner from Leeds, 3.6. All pretty cheap, these guys. Alfredo Morelos has joined from Olympique Marseille. Of course, he's there in real life, or he was there. He left for Brentford, and he's made his way back now to Rangers. I've come forward to the 10th season now, so we're 10 years after I put them into the Premier League. Here is how the Premier League is looking. There are some surprising things in it. You can see Norwich all the way up in 7th, for example. You can see Rangers relegated once again. Reading eventually get their return to the Premier League. Now, here's the question. Where are Celtic? I'm not seeing Celtic on this list, unless I'm being blind. So I'm assuming at some point, Celtic have also finally been relegated. So this was the last time we saw them. So let's go forward. The following season, Rangers were relegated again, Celtic in 15th, so they didn't really improve. Then we'll have a look again. Celtic up there. Rangers obviously down in the Championship. They come back up and are relegated again. Celtic in 15th in 29-30. And in 30-31, Rangers obviously down in the Championship. Celtic are finally relegated, 36 points, 14 goal difference, identical goal difference to Brentford. And they've gone down on goals scored, which seems very, very harsh. And in the current season, Rangers are going down. Let's go down to the Championship and see if Celtic are making their way back up. They are not. They lost in the playoffs. So we're going to have next season, we're going to have both teams down in the Championship. They have not survived in the Premier League. Let me know down in the comments if you think this is actually what would happen to Rangers or Celtic, or do you think they have enough, financial power to survive, if they have enough fan base to survive, if they could draw in the right players, of course, they can try and get back into European football, or would they really struggle against some of those top English teams and drop down probably to the Championship? So I've looked through another couple of seasons and Celtic and Rangers are stuck at the Championship. They cannot get out of it. You can see this is the season afterwards, both of them missing out in the playoffs. Actually, Rangers just missing out on the playoffs. Season after, Rangers and Celtic again both in the playoffs, both staying there down in the Championship. So I guess that partially answers the question on how Celtic and Rangers will get on in the Premier League. The answer is they don't. If you disagree, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know how you really think they would do in the Premier League. Would they be good enough to stay in there? If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Even if you didn't like the result, please give it a thumbs up and let me know, where should I look at next? What team should I drop into the Premier League or another division? Maybe we try something like Man City and La Liga. Could they compete? Would they destroy La Liga? If you're interested in more videos like this, hit that subscribe button. And I've done another series where I flipped English football upside down. It's back in FM22, but I think you should go check it out here. Have a look and see how things turned out. How long did it take those big Premier League teams to get back to the Premier League?